Good evening, everyone. My name is Stuart Mass. I am a South Lake Tahoe-based Master Gardener, class of 2016, and I will be moderating this evening's growing mushroom workshop. So first off, thank you very much to our sponsors, UC Davis Tahoe Environmental Research Center, Slow Food Lake Tahoe, and our chapter of the University of California Extension Master Gardener, Lake Tahoe Basin and Carson Valley. We do have an amazing grow your own schedule again set up for this spring and summer, starting May 4th, running all the way every week through June 15th with a variety of different subjects. We will be doing these every Wednesday, 6 p.m. to 7:30 virtually. You can register for the workshops at slowfoodlaketahoe.org/events and find further details about those workshops. For those that would like to see some demonstrations in person, up in the Truckee Community Gardens, we will have the in-garden workshops. Again, those will be running May 7th all the way through June 18th, and those will start 10 a.m. Going through 11 a.m. Again, further details and registration can be found at the slowfoodlaketahoe.org events webpage. For those of you who are picking up kits from this amazing workshop, and for those in the future, we do have 3 locations around the Lake Tahoe Basin for you to pick those up. Those will be available at the locations from 9 a.m. through to 11 a.m. For this one in particular, this will be this Saturday, South Lake Tahoe, at the parking lots at the crossing. That's beside the Lake Tahoe Ale Works, Big Five, Cup of Coffee, and so forth. Truckee up on Broadway Road at the Tahoe Regional Park, just beside the Slow Foods Lake Tahoe Community Garden. And those of you in Tahoe City, up in the northeast shore, we'll have our station set up at the UC Davis Tahoe Field Station at the Old Fish Hatchery. Couple quick housekeeping things. If you do have any questions or comments during the presentation, we'd love to answer those at the end once Marissa finishes her presentation and gives you a little dip into some of the behind the scenes with prepping the kits at our Tahoe Mushroom local business here, which was very exciting. We have muted everyone for the presentation for several reasons, but we can maybe open that up at the end. This recording is being recorded and will be uploaded to the YouTube channel. We'll follow up with all the participants so that you can watch these again if needed. And we do have some other videos up there, and we will request that you try and follow that page because we've got some exciting content to share with you this spring and summer. On that note, I'm going to pass it over now to Marissa to start the workshop.
All right. There we go. All right. Hi, I'm Marissa, and we're going to talk about mushrooms. Mushrooms sometimes get a bad reputation, or some people don't like them, and I'm hoping that after this presentation, I'll have changed some minds. My mushroom journey started about 6 years ago when my boyfriend and I packed up our car and went off to Oregon, and a few days later, after walking around the woods, we were hooked. Some of our friends might say now that we are addicted and almost obsessed with mushrooms. We have mushroom couch pillows, mushroom pictures. I got mushrooms on my clothes. We got mushroom lights in our garden. So I'm hoping that y'all might be enthusiastic about mushrooms as I am. We're going to provide this workshop on growing mushrooms indoors, so it'll be in your house, not outside. Since you're participating, you'll receive support on how to start and maintain your mushroom kit. And if you purchase one, you'll have one to grow in your own home. If you have any email or any questions, please write TahoeMushLife@gmail.com and we will try to answer them. And we want to know how your kit performs. What do you do? What do you cook with them? What do you end up doing with your block? We want to know all of it. Why do we want to grow mushrooms? Obviously, they're good food. We all like them. They're low in calories, carbs, and they're a great protein substitute for vegans and vegetarians. But they're not just food. So even if you don't really like the taste of mushrooms, there are other reasons to still grow them. There are medicinal uses. Studies have shown that certain types of fungi are used in the form of extracts and powder for prevention, alleviation, and healing of multiple different diseases. People are making packaging from mushroom mycelium. This packaging can be completely recycled back into the earth and never see a landfill. So see you later, styrofoam. There's such thing as mycoremediation. Fungus can actually break down and remove contaminants from the environment. They can filter toxins from stormwater runoff and help clean up industrial oil spills. Oyster mushrooms, like the ones that you will be growing, have shown that they can remove a significant amount of pollutants from the soil and water. You can also use mushrooms for biopesticides. Fungi can help target specific insects and some plants' diseases. The insects eat the fungus and the spores sprout inside of the insect, and eventually it will sprout, killing it. And then the mushroom grows out of the ant or caterpillar. Little history on mushrooms. Most cultures have been involved and interested in mushrooms far longer than we have in America, and have recognized them for their medicinal and nutritional properties. In Europe, it's common for families to spend their weekend mushroom foraging in the woods. Native Americans were eating mushrooms before we even got here. When I first thought of mushrooms, before I started this journey, all I knew of were the white button ones, the white button mushrooms and portobellas. And I never really liked the white button mushrooms because my mom always served them raw in salads, and I'd pick them out. And I don't really care for the portobello either. But now I love mushrooms. There are so many more than just the ones we see in the grocery store. And I think they taste much better. And even if mushrooms aren't edible, the ones that we see, they still look cool. They come in so many different colors, shapes, and sizes. What are mushrooms? The part that we see of the mushroom, the part of the mushrooms that we see is the fruit, and they're the reproductive structures of certain fungi. Fungi do not manufacture their own food like plants. They must obtain from outside sources. They're one of the most abundant groups of organisms on the planet, and a majority of them are too small to see. This one here is called a cat's tongue. That's about the size of a nickel. Over here, we have a fried chicken mushroom. Down here, matsutakis would be about the size of your fist. And these witch's hat are about the size of your thumb. They come in all different sizes. Now we're gonna get into some of the types of fungi. Saprophytic. The saprophytic fungi are decomposers. They grow on dead or decaying organic matter, and they're nature's recyclers. They help replenish the soil by breaking down the complex organic material into simpler reusable compounds. If we didn't have this fungus, we would just be covered in a mountain of unrotted wood and leaves. Nothing would ever degrade. These varieties that grow in wood or humus are good candidates for cultivation. These are the ones that most people are growing indoors. Here we have your lion's mane. These are good to eat and have medicinal properties. Here are some shiitakes. Those obviously taste good. Oyster mushrooms, we'll be growing this same type of mushroom indoors. And then turkey tails, which are used for medicinal purposes also. Then we'll get into some parasitic fungi. So these feed on living organisms and including insects. These are what people are using for their biopesticides. They can cause reduced production, disease, and or death. And this one here is a cordyceps. This cordyceps is crazy. The spores actually land on a caterpillar, and then it germinates inside the insect. The mycelium grows inside and slowly devours the insect from the inside, and then the mushroom grows out of its body, killing the insect. This one here is a lobster mushroom. It starts out as a russula, which is an unedible mushroom, and then it's taken over by a parasitic fungi, which turns it this red color, and then it becomes edible, and it tastes really good. It kind of has a seafood flavor. Next, we have some mycorrhizal fungi. These are the hardest to cultivate. Why? Because they form a mutual beneficial relationship with the root tips of plants where the nutrients are exchanged. A lot of studies, people don't know why these mushrooms grow in the areas they do, and they haven't figured out how to grow them indoors. The mushrooms actually help enhance the plant's uptake of water and nutrients from the soil. So these mushrooms are critical to the health of forests, and many of the trees won't even grow without this mushroom. And like I said, they're the hardest to cultivate due to the relationship with the trees. Here on the left in the hand is a bolete or a porcini. We can find these in the Lake Tahoe area. And then your chanterelles, we don't really find those here. Those are more up in Oregon, but these are some of the most delicious mushrooms. You got your matsutakis and of course your truffles. Now we're getting a little bit into the mushroom life cycle. So here we see a mushroom. So the spores are reproductive units that you see at the beginning and end of a mushroom's life cycle. It starts with the mushroom here, dropping spores. They're released from the gills or the pores on the underside of this cap, and they float in the air to seek its most ideal environment and conditions to germinate. There's spores all over, it just needs the right conditions to actually make the mushroom. When the spores hit the ground, they form a hyphae. We'll hear a little bit more about that in a little bit. Then the hyphae will form the actual mycelium. The mycelium is the underground web, and then it'll form a young or primordial mushroom. And that's when the stem and cap start to form. And then that's what we see is the final fruiting body is the actual mushroom. So here we're into mycelium. The mycelium is an intricate web of fine threads that's underground. It's formed when two spores come together and form a long branch tubular structure known as the hyphae. And then when the two hyphae fit together and they're compatible, they'll fuse and they'll actually form a whole mycelium web underground. And it's always there. Even when you pick the mushrooms, the mycelium stays there. It never leaves. You're not hurting the mycelium. It'll reproduce on its own. So picking mushrooms doesn't hurt anything in the ground. It's actually good for it. The hyphae helps absorb the nutrients from the soil and transport to other parts of the mushrooms. So in order to understand mushrooms, you need to know a little bit about the anatomy. This is a typical mushroom. Obviously, not all mushrooms look like this. This is your standard mushroom. So you have the top semi-spherical cap that can have different characteristics such as scales, striations, looks like little warts on there, or it's peeling off. And then underneath, you can have gills, pores, or teeth. And this is where all the spores are released. Next, going down the stalk, you'll have the ring, which is where the cap is actually attached to the skirt before it opens up completely and comes out of the ground. It's kind of saving the spores in there so they don't fall out too quick. Then you'll continue down the stipe or stalk, and that's what's the vertical part that holds the cap above the ground. And then down closer to the ground, you might have a vulva down here, and not all mushrooms have these. This is just certain things that a mushroom can have, but this is how you can figure out what a mushroom is, what type it is, if it's edible. So the vulva is a protective veil that holds the mushroom when it's young, and it pushes through as it grows, and it leaves it at the stem. And then we'll get down to the mycelium, and that's what actually grows the mushroom and is the most important part. And that's just at the bottom. So when you start to understand these, you'll be able to figure out what the mushrooms are, where they live, different things. Now we're going to get into some local mushrooms. So these are mushrooms that we can find in the Tahoe region. This one is called a puffball. And like it says, it's a large ball shaped and it looks puffy. So right here, this is a typical one we'll see in Tahoe, kind of with these little raised warts or nudges on them. These mushrooms are found in soil or on decaying wood, and they do not have gills. And like we were talking about the mushroom anatomy, they don't have a stalk or anything else. It's pretty much a ball on the ground. These are edible when it looks like this, and the inside is only white flesh. And then they're not edible when it starts to degrade and turns to spore dust and changes to a brown yellow color like here on your right. So shaggy mane, most of us have probably seen these in our yards. They have a distinctive scaly conical cap, and they're also called inky caps because they degrade quickly and begin to look like dripping ink, as you'll see down here. They look pretty crazy. And they are edible when they're at this stage before they start to turn black and drip. They'll grow in late summer and fall, and they're commonly found in lawns and wood chips. Next, we'll have chicken of the woods. This is a large polypore. A polypore is a mushroom that doesn't have any gills. It's just pores on the bottom, and it grows on hardwood. This one's pretty easy to identify because it's bright orange and yellow. As you can see here, the underside is yellow and the top of the mushroom is actually orange. And it grows on wood in huge clusters. So if you find one, you'll mostly find a bunch of them like you can see here in this picture. This is actually our first trip to Oregon right here when we found these. This is what started it all. They're edible and have a meaty texture like chicken and will absorb flavors. It's not as common here, but it is found. Dead man's foot, or called dog turd fungus. As you can see, kind of looks like poop. But this thing starts as a club-shaped dark brown object, and then as it matures on top, you can see here the wall disintegrates and it forms a dark chocolate brown spore mass. This mushroom is very firm. It can push up through pavement. It's usually found next to roads, sidewalks. This is actually used in mycorrhizal fungus mixtures for gardening that we all probably buy to put in our garden. You can dissolve the mushroom when it looks like this into water, and then you can water it into your own garden as a beneficial mycorrhizae. We've seen these actually at the Reno airport. If you're walking by the parking garage, you'll see them right in front there under the trees. Next, we have the porcini. These are known for their thick bulbous stem, and the undercap is spongy. This is a very large mushroom. It can grow up to 12 inches in diameter. It's brown or reddish brown in color with a slightly sticky texture, and it's found in spring to fall on the ground in mixed forest. We have things called spring kings, which are the spring king bullies that are going to start to pop soon around here. They're very dense and they're not hollow, and it makes them great for eating. This mushroom here, this will feed 2 people because you can eat the whole thing, and the whole thing is thick. And then we'll get into morels, which are probably my favorite mushroom. Not that I should pick favorites, but they're really good. These have a honeycomb appearance and they almost look like a brain. When you start to see them, you'll really recognize them. It's one of the best tasting mushrooms and can be easily stored for later uses by drying them. You can dehydrate them and they last for years. We have some friends that have them for 5 or 6 years and they still taste very good. Not all mushrooms taste good when they're dehydrated and then you rehydrate them. They get a chewy flavor. These taste almost like you fresh picked them. These are found in disturbed ground and burn areas from wildfires. And since we were all affected by the fires last year, we know we have a lot of burned ground. And hopefully we'll be able to find these in our backyards. So thanks, Caldor. Now we're going to get into some typically cultivated mushrooms. These are your saprophytic mushrooms that can actually decompose stuff, and that's why they're used for cultivation. They're usually grown on hardwood, sawdust, or logs. And all of these mushrooms you see here were actually grown in my house. We did start with grow kits, but we grew all these in the house. So you can do this. It's not that hard. And there's not just one way to grow mushrooms. People are experimenting with new ways all the time. Here we have the lion's mane. As we said, the lion's mane is it's very delicious and it looks crazy. It looks like little hairs coming out of these balls. It's cool. It's a really cool mushroom. They're using a lot of medicinal uses also. It's been said to help with brain neuroregeneration. Reishi is another medicinal mushroom and it looks like antlers. These things are tough. You can barely break them off. And once they're dried, you have to you can't even cut them with a knife. They get so hard. These people they're breaking them down into powders or making tea with them for medicinal uses. Shiitake here, they look kind of crazy and fuzzy. These are one of the harder to cultivate mushrooms just because it takes so long to colonate the block. So not everyone's doing it. And they take a while to grow too. Your Pio here, these are pretty crazy and they're also tasty. They're similar to the shiitake in flavor, I think. But we're going to be focusing on the oyster mushroom. You will all hopefully will be growing mushrooms if you bought the kit. So there's a lot of methods of growing mushrooms, and there is a lot more than just what you're going to be doing. So I'm going to explain that a little bit. You're performing only one step in the cultivation process. What we have already done for you is a spore cultivation, which is the first stage. It's the germination of the spore or isolation of mushroom tissue. You isolate the mushroom culture and you put it onto an agar or petri dish. And then when you have a clean sample, you can store this agar or petri dish pretty much indefinitely so you can keep propagating mushrooms. After you get the spore cultivation, then you'll move on to spawn, which is the second stage, the mycelial expansion. You'll take a small amount of the mycelium from the agar from the petri dish and transfer it onto a substrate, which is usually sterilized grain, and let that colonizer grow. You'll then transfer that grain to a bulk substrate, straw or sawdust, and continue to let it colonize. And that's what's known as spawn. The spawn is then used to inoculate the final substrate, the fruiting substrate, and this is left to grow until the mycelium takes over and is fully colonized. And now we're getting to what you're going to get. So we've already done that for you. That's what we've done up the stage we've done now for the bag. And you're going to do the third stage, the mushroom fruit body development. And the things that you'll need to be watching out for and control are temperature, humidity, air exchange, and light levels at your fruiting surface. So what you are getting, you will be getting the blue or white pearl oyster mushroom block. They'll pretty much grow the same. They just look a little different. So it's the same care techniques. Everything is the same for both mushroom. And like I said, we've done the first two stages for you. So the block is fully inoculated and ready to start growing your mushrooms. The mushrooms will start to grow in 2 to 4 days from opening the bag. So if you're going to go on vacation or something, I wouldn't open the bag. You can let it sit for 1 to 2 weeks until you're ready to grow. Because once you cut into this bag, they're going to start growing. And they grow pretty quick. So for the care of your mushroom bag, you will get one of these blocks, and it'll be in a box with a hole in it. You will cut an X in the bag with a sharp knife, about 3 by 3, and then you'll miss the opening. And you want to cut into the block. So here he's using a box cutter. Use any sharp knife, and you want to cut into the block, because cutting into the block will actually help with the mycelial growth and help the mushrooms grow. And don't pull away the plastic or anything here. Just let it sit right on there. The mushrooms will push right through it, and it helps hold the moisture in there. You're going to want to keep this in an indirect light. So not in a sunny window. I keep mine sometimes in the bathroom just because I got a heated floor and it keeps the temperature regulated. We grow them on our kitchen table. Mostly you want to regulate temperature. The mushrooms need oxygen to grow, so you don't want to lock them in a closet or in like a Tupperware or anything. And then in 2 to 4 days, the mushrooms will start to pin. This is called pinning. These small little mushrooms here start to pin, and then they'll start to grow bigger. So these are small blue oyster mushrooms. Once you start to see them pinning, you need to mist the hole at least twice a day. In the morning and the evening. If it's really dry, I'd mist it 3 times. But just mist the actual hole that it is. Just right in here, just mist it just to keep the moisture in there. And new growth will occur every day, so keep an eye on them. And this time frame is approximate, so I don't want a bunch of emails on Tuesday saying my mushrooms haven't grown yet. They'll probably grow. Just give them a little time. Give them a little love. What could go wrong? So like I said, our big focus is moisture, especially here in Tahoe because the air is so dry. We don't have a lot of humidity as other areas where mushrooms just grow prevalently. So we want to keep it moist. Don't let it dry out too much. And this can be achieved by, like I said, like misting or spraying the growing surface. Air. In this picture here, this is what I said. We actually locked it in a Rubbermaid with holes to try to keep the humidity up, and it didn't get enough air exchange. And these started to grow really long, thin, kind of wavy. They're still edible. They might be a little chewier, but if this happens, if you start to see them growing kind of a little weird, just move it around, maybe open the window for a little bit. I know it's going to get cold, but just try to get some fresh air in there. Like I said, just don't lock them in the closet or anywhere crazy. And then temperature. The big temperature fluctuations will kind of hurt the mushrooms. They grow best at 65 to 75 degrees. So you don't want to keep it next to your fireplace or right next to your heater. And just if you can keep a consistent temperature, that'd be good. And light, make sure it's not in direct sunlight. Most of these big cultivation operations are just indoors in grow tents. And so they're using just a fluorescent light or something small. So it doesn't need a lot of light. The light just helps the mushroom grow in the right direction and out of the block. So now you're harvesting. So you grow your mushrooms and they look like this, which look really nice. And they're ready to harvest when the mushroom cap is about 2 to 3 inches across. So here it's all about timing. If you don't harvest them one day, you'll come back the next day and they'll have gone too far. And when they go too far, this cap here will start to flatten out and curve upwards, and they'll start to look a little funky. They'll start to split a little bit on the edge here. And if you let them go longer than that, they'll start to spore. So like I said, the mushrooms into the life cycle is sporing. So down from the gills will spore, and you'll start to see it stack up on the mushroom down here, or it'll get all over the floor. The mushrooms are still edible. Like I said, you don't want to save them. You want to eat them right away if you pull them off like that, but it's okay. Just keep an eye on them. So you'll pull the entire cluster off the block here. Just rip the whole thing off with your hand. And it's okay if some of that mycelial growth comes off with your cluster. It actually helps agitate the mycelium more. And when you're done with this, you're going to just scrape them all off anyway. So you'll harvest your mushrooms in this big cluster. And then you want to cut off the bottom where the mycelial growth is. It just doesn't taste very good. It's got some of that sawdust in there, so it's pretty gritty. And just cut it off and throw it outside. So hopefully you want more mushrooms after you get your first flush. So after you harvest them, like we just showed, you remove the bag from the box, and then you scrape that block on the open side so that it's a flat surface. Then you're going to tape that hole and make sure it's sealed again. You'll put the bag back into the box with the new side facing out, and you'll start the process all over again by cutting a new hole. So back to square one. And hopefully you'll get what we call flushes. So that was your first flush. Now hopefully you'll get a second flush. Each block should be able to do at least 2 flushes. If you want, you can try for more, but then you encounter more problems with mold and lack of moisture. If you're going for a third flush, I say almost soak the bag on one side for like an hour and then try again. But there's not going to be, don't hope you're going to get 4 or 5 flushes out of these bags. 2 to 3 is really good. So we have mushrooms. Now what are we going to do with them? So the oyster mushrooms are best when they're eaten fresh. If you pick them off the block and eat them, that's best. But you can eat them with 2 to 3 days after harvesting. If you need to store them, put them in the fridge with a brown paper bag or cover them in a bowl with a paper towel. If you decide you can't eat all the mushrooms at one time, you can dry or dehydrate them. I've found personally, these mushrooms don't rehydrate very well. They're really chewy, but you could use them, you can powder them, like crush them all up and make a seasoning, mix it in with a seasoning or a soup thickener. I've used my dehydrated oysters for like broth, to make a mushroom broth to throw into a soup, but they were just a little chewy on their own. So after you get 2 to 3 flushes from the bag, you will dispose of the material, and you can just throw it right outside. Like we talked about, it's just sawdust and mycelium, or you can put it into your compost bin, mix in your garden beds, or throw outside, but please take it out of the plastic bag. If you want to get crazy and decide you really like mushrooms and you like growing them, you can try to get even more. The substrate can be taken out of the bag, chopped, broken down, and covered under wood chips in your yard in a shaded, moist area. But here you're gonna have to treat it almost like a garden bed. You're gonna have to water it pretty much every morning because, like I said, moisture is a big deal. Or like you see here, we've mixed it with cardboard and used coffee grounds in a 5-gallon bucket with drilled holes. So we just destroyed all that mycelium block, and we mixed it with sheets of cardboard that we just separated and used coffee grounds just from the house. And here's just oyster mushrooms going on a Star Wars book. It shows you mushrooms can grow anywhere. So if you're having trouble figuring out how you're going to eat your mushrooms, here's some ideas. The basic for any mushroom that you find or grow, you want to start by sauteing with a small amount of oil till the mushrooms get a little color. And then that's where you can get creative. You can add sauces. You can add them to soups. Here we got an oyster omelet. We just cooked them down, then we added some egg and cooked it up. Over here, I did a pulled oyster mushroom barbecue sandwich, similar to a pulled pork. I just ripped the mushrooms, cooked them down in some oil, and then until they started to get a little brown, then I added some barbecue sauce and did that. The oyster mushrooms go really good in Asian dishes, stir fries, soups, that sort of thing. If y'all get some crazy ideas, let me know. I like to cook. Here in Tahoe, we're always concerned about our watershed and the lake and where our water's growing. And with mushrooms, they're our friends. You can just throw the block outside. There's no pesticides. There's nothing in there. Like I said, it's just mycelium and sawdust. And if anything, we'll get more mushrooms. So we were all affected by the fires last year, whether by smoke or anything else. And this is the plus side. Burn morels, which thrive in the burn and disturbed areas. And they help provide nutrients for future growth within the soil for mushroom and other plants. We've already found morels this year. So they're everywhere. Hopefully they're going to be everywhere. I'm not going to tell you my spots. Some true mushroom hunter never gives up their locations, but I will help with elevation and aspect if you are interested in going out and finding your own mushrooms. So we have a lot of forest that was affected by the Caldor fire. I live out in Christmas Valley and the burn came right up to my backyard. So hopefully I'll have some in my backyard. It's a good year to go out and look for mushrooms. And then if you are, it's called foraging. So the best way to forage is to go with someone who is knowledgeable and knows the area. And before you go eating every mushroom you find, you need to confirm the identity and make sure that it's safe to eat. There's a very few mushrooms that are poisonous, but not all are edible. They might just make you a little upset. They're not going to kill you, but you want to make sure you ask and ask again. It's best to bring a knife. We just cut the mushrooms right here, like at the base, and we leave that mycelium and base of the stalk in there to grow more mushrooms. And then we try to bring a basket or a mesh bag. You don't want plastic because, like we said, the spores, they come out from the caps. So as soon as these bodies have formed, they're sporing. So they're releasing spores. So you're walking around with the basket or a mesh bag, you're helping spread the spores. So you're just producing more fungi. Mushroom hunting can be challenging, enlightening, and uplifting. You're walking around in the woods. It's fun. It's something different to do instead of just hiking a peak. You can find something to eat. So hopefully now we're not scared of mushrooms anymore. Fungophobia, not us. That's the belief that mushrooms are actively hostile and worthless. And that's not true. Mushrooms are delicious, nutritious, vital and valuable, potent and beautiful. Now I'm going to show you some behind the scenes. We did these bags. We made these bags with the Tahoe Mushroom Company that's located in South Lake Tahoe. Here are the mushroom bags that you will actually be receiving if you purchased a kit. This is before they fully colonized. So we kind of did that second stage mycelial expansion. We just put the grain in here, mix it all up, and now it's colonizing. Oh, sorry about that. My computer. So to sterilize the bag, so we put the substrate into the bags and you have to sterilize it. So this is sterilizing of the bags. 120 bags are in here. It's a very large sterilizer. This is passing the bags into, so the stuff that's done like the first and second stage, those you want to be pretty clean. So this is like a flow. We got the laminar flow hood here and a clean air, and we're moving into a clean area, like a lab setting. And then that's just that flow hood there that keeps that clean air, so we're not contaminating the mushroom glow box. So all it grows is mushroom and not mold. You can get a lot of contaminants if you have weird air. The temperature of the blocks before we even put the substrate in there or the grain spawn in there, we had to make sure it was not too high, just because that pressure cooked them really high. And just doing some work. Here's Kyle on the left. He's the owner of the Tahoe Mushroom Company. And yeah, he has a nice little setup in there. Mix in the bags, but this is all done for you. I just want to show you a little bit of the background of what we did before you actually get the block, because there is a lot of stuff. It's kind of crazy how much work goes into growing mushrooms, like cultivating mushrooms when they actually grow just outside. And mixing up the bag. So all that grain spawn was put on top of the substrate, and then we mix it in so that it colonizes all the way through the bag and not just the top. Mix in bags, putting bags into boxes. And that's pretty much the end. So we're just going to recap. If you purchased a mushroom kit, you're going to pick up this Saturday, April 9th. And once you cut into the bag, the mushrooms will start to pin in 2 to 4 days. So make sure you're ready and watch them. Like I said, if you're going to go out of town, just wait to hold off on cutting that bag until you're home. And keep an eye on the moisture, because that's the hardest for us in Tahoe due to the very dry air. And like I said, they'll grow fast every day. It's exciting. They get bigger and bigger every day. And harvest your mushrooms and enjoy. And like I said, I want to know what you do with your mushrooms. What'd you cook with them? Did you decide to do the 5-gallon bucket technique? Did you come up with something completely different? That's cool too. Let us know. And this is our contact information. And you can email us at TahoeMushLife@gmail.com. And like I said, if you have any questions or problems, just go ahead and email us. We're here to help and make sure you get mushrooms and you like mushrooms. And if you're interested in any resources, literature, foraging guides, we can help point you in the right direction. And that's my presentation.
Stuart, are you there? I think you must be muted. Still having technical difficulties. Bear with us. Now you're full screen.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Marissa. What a fantastic presentation. I know I learned a lot. So we did get some Q&A. A couple of those are more about some of the logistics about picking up your kits. I believe I can answer those, but feel free, Annie, Mary, Dave, anyone else, if I don't address those. So one of those came in, can I turn up at any time during the 9 to 11 time slot to pick up my mushrooms? I'm scheduling my weekend. Yes, I think from the volunteer point of view, sooner rather than later. We all have busy schedules and are enjoying our springtime. So yep, that would be the answer. Anytime between 9 and 11, preference being earlier. Another question that came in for the pickup was, can I choose which kit to pick up? The way this, and I've seen kind of how this has gone on for the last few months, amazing volunteers and whatnot. I believe if you picked one kit, you would get the Blue Oyster kit. If you purchased 2 kits per the email that came out, you would also get the pearl oysters, is from what I believe. But if anyone else has any additional info with that, we can address it. What I'm going to do right now is just share my screen, and we'll look at some of the other questions, which I believe would be for Marissa, if you can answer those. So. Okay, so over to Marissa. Are there any mushrooms that look like puffballs that are poisonous?
The puffballs, I don't believe are poisonous. They just won't taste very good.
White flesh is key.
The white flesh. Mostly you need to make sure that it's white on the inside if you're going to try to eat them. If they look yellow or brown at all or funky, they're not. When you're harvesting anything outside, there's a good chance there could be bugs. So you want to make sure to cut inside and look for that before you go put it in your fridge and everything. But no, I don't think anything are really poisonous. I would just make sure to, make sure you want to eat it.
Use your guy.
All right. What are we doing? Are there any mushrooms that grow here that look like the ones we can eat that we shouldn't eat? The morels, chicken of the woods, porcini, and your puffballs are actually some of the most easily identifiable mushrooms, all 4 of those that grow here in the area. Mostly anything with the cap and stem, those are the ones you have to identify a little more because there's so many different varieties. The boletes are unique just in the pore on the bottom, and there's different kinds of boletes that grow here in the area. And none of them are going to kill you, like I said, but you just want to make sure. They might cause some gastrointestinal distress, which isn't fun. Can we put discarded mushroom sawdust to worm bin? Yes, it's just mycelium. We threw it in we have a buddy that lives down in Marin and does that, and they grow everywhere. One, because there's more moisture, but yeah, you can go ahead and do that. One picture shows the harvester wearing gloves. Is that necessary? No, that's just because we were in the lab setting, like I showed a little bit of. The gloves aren't necessary when it gets to the stage. You're not worried about cross-contamination. That was just our buddy who's working in the lab and harvesting a lot of mushrooms. And worm bin, did that one? Yes, you can. Throw it outside, have fun. How long approximately until the mushrooms are ready for harvest? So they'll start pinning in 2 to 4 days, and I'd say 3 to 6 days they're going to be ready to harvest. It all depends on how much the block was colonized, but within a week you should have mushrooms that you're going to eat. How long can we wait max until we cut the bag open? I wouldn't really do more than 2 weeks. If you do, I just put it somewhere kind of dark where it stays about the same temperature. And it's just a sealed bag right now. Any more questions?
Let me just check if we got any more coming in right now.
Stuart, I think that there might be some questions that were directed directly to me. I didn't see if this was on there. Is anyone picking up mushrooms from Glenshire? Out of town? Did you get that one?
I did not know. That's a great one. There's a few more in here that I'm
Glenshire,
just going to add in here. Yeah.
She's out of town and she'd love to grab some. If you're picking some up on Saturday. That was from Janelle, I believe.
I got a question that someone did. If you're using the leftover mycelium in a bucket, is there any concern about other spores contaminating the bucket and growing other undesirable mushrooms? No. I mean, you're putting in that mycelium just from the oyster mushrooms, and we don't really have too many mushrooms just growing around here in this area. I'd be more concerned if you were where a lot of mushrooms are, like in a lab or something where you have different ones. Hopefully you'll just get oyster mushrooms. So I don't think any other mushrooms will grow out of there or any spores that are going to be bad for you.
I have a couple here that I'm trying to keep up with. So we have Jeffrey has recommended that the Mushrooms Demystified books. I'm not sure if anyone has seen that. We also have another tip here from Melissa saying use cat litter buckets with drilled holes.
Boom, that works.
Yep, another couple that just came in here. Have you ever had success in setting up an outdoor morel bed?
No, I wish I could say yes. We've been harvesting morels for probably 5 or 6 years, and anytime we bring them home, we take the ends and everything, and I throw them out in the yard. I make slurries with water and sugar that we throw out in the yard, and haven't had anything. Maybe this year, since it pretty much burned up to my backyard, we will. But we've been trying. Morels are crazy, and they kind of mystify most of the people that are cultivating just because they're not real sure how they produce. The morels in the burn area actually take the heat to release spores, so they don't release their spores until there is heat. So they're hard to cultivate. I've been trying. If you try, let me know. Are any of these local mushrooms poisonous to dogs? No, I don't think we have any mushrooms here that are poisonous to dogs. My dog doesn't even go close to mushrooms. He just runs around the woods like a crazy person, doesn't even care about them. I'm not exactly certain. If your dog eats a mushroom, I would definitely check out what type of mushroom it is and try to get a little info. If I keep the mushrooms in the bathroom, what's to stop them from releasing spores that will continue to grow? You need wood or something for them to decompose on. That would be a lot of spores in there if they actually just started growing, and it'd be really moist too. So mostly I'd be like, if you had a bunch of wood furniture or something crazy in your bathroom, but that's all sealed, I don't think you'll have any problem with that.
I think that's it so far for
Did you see the ones I sent to you, Stuart?
I did, yep. I think most of them have been addressed. Melissa had a quick question. Is Tahoe water best? And her reply was yes.
Yes, Tahoe water. Tahoe water for everything.
Excellent, excellent.
I had a question about, can we still purchase kits? I don't know if you brought that one up. The answer is yes. You can go to slowfoodLakeTahoe.org/event and in effect sign up again, and it'll ask you for your credit card.
I have one question. Someone is curious if the sawdust, what the sawdust is made from, which wood, and if it's processed wood. It's oak and it comes from a mill, so no, it's not processed. There's no glues or formaldehyde in it. It's safe. There's nothing in there or the mushrooms wouldn't grow. And it's also sterilized. So we take all that sawdust and put it in those sterilization bins at high temp and pressure, and it sterilizes all the wood, all the substrate, so nothing's in there. Or if something else is in there, the mushrooms wouldn't grow. They're very picky.
Another question we just got in, Marissa, is what elevation aspect might I find morels? And I know you don't want to give all your secret spots away like we discussed yesterday. And I believe that Steve has found them on Echo before.
Yeah, we're currently finding them at about 3,500 feet down. I mean, I'll just throw out Kybers. There's a lot of burn. You just start walking around and you'll start finding them. I haven't found any on Echo. That's pretty cool. But hopefully they'll probably be this year.
Another question that just came in from Sierra is, can you talk us through the 5-gallon process in more detail?
Sure. We'll have that spent mushroom block, and we're going to take it out of the bag completely, and you're just going to separate it with your hands. At this point, we're not being sterile like with the gloves or anything, because you're just going to put it into coffee grounds or cardboard. You'll just take a 5-gallon bucket. You'll want to clean it a little bit. You don't want anything. I mean, you're going to grow mushrooms, and if you want to eat them, you don't want gross stuff in there. So clean the bucket, and then just drill holes. We just drilled holes probably the size smaller than a quarter. They don't need a big hole. Those oyster mushrooms will just push out and just hang on with that little block and form a whole cluster. So you'll drill the holes, probably 8 to 10 holes, just kind of sporadically on the 5-gallon bucket, and you'll tear apart that block. And you'll kind of mix it in. You could just do coffee grounds. The cardboard usually has like a little glue or sugar in there, and that's why the oyster mushrooms like it. But you'll rip the cardboard, kind of just a box, and rip it and layer it in there. So you'll put like cardboard, a little of some used ground. You'll sprinkle some of that mushroom block, just like we did with the colonization of the bags. You kind of want to spread that mycelium all through the 5-gallon bucket so that it grows.
Okay, looks like another one, and I think we discussed this is great, and I think we were even gonna set a little competition up for internally the Master Gardeners. So let me put this in here. Sorry, didn't copy. How many times can we try to get a grow cycle from the bag?
I said 3's probably the most. They just start to not grow a little funky. The bag gets dry. You'll notice that they grow different. When they start to pin and stuff, they'll look different. They won't look quite the same. And the taste and the texture will be a little different.
Okay. And just Annie had something, Tamara from Glenshire is picking up a kit on Saturday. So that was just for the group. I'm not seeing any further questions right now. I do have a couple of slides that I will finish with here. Okay. So again, just to recap some of the workshop info, the 3 locations to pick up on Saturday, April 9th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., South Lake Tahoe, Truckee, and Tahoe City. Again, thank you so much for our sponsors, UC Davis Tahoe Environmental Research Center, Slow Food Lake Tahoe, and our Master Gardener chapter here in the Lake Tahoe Basin. Huge thanks to Marissa, her partner Matt, Kyle Woodland from Tahoe Mushroom Company. Kyle is actually one of my friends also. I think it's a great new business that he's setting up, and you'll probably see some of his mushrooms at the local restaurants here, at some of the farmers markets and throughout, and we're fully supportive of him. It's really, really fun venture. Thank you to all the Master Gardeners that have volunteered to make this also happen. So great work. I know it takes a team to have something like this. In the chat, I did put Marissa's Gmail address for I believe it's TahoeMush something in there. So any questions you want follow up, you want to show off your cooking dishes, you want to share some secret spots, any other kind of questions about the grow kits and whatnot, Marissa, I'm sure would be able to answer those. With that said, I'm just going to see if there's any more chats in here, and if not, I'd like to thank everyone for their time again. We finished a little bit earlier here. And on that, Ju, Thank you, everyone. I will try and moderate as much as I can this year and help out the Master Gardeners. Thank you to all the presenters, our sponsors, and all the volunteers. And we look forward to seeing everyone for their pickups on Saturday, and then again for the workshop next Wednesday from 6 till 7:30. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.